So this is for my notes, 1 Corinthians 14, right? And this is throughout the whole chapter, throughout the whole thing. It says in 27, 1 Corinthians 14:27, no more than 2 or 3 shall speak in tongues. They must speak one at a time, and someone who interprets must interpret what they say. If no one is present who can interpret, they must be silent in the church meeting and speak in tongues to God privately. This is 1 Corinthians 14:23. Even so, if unbelievers or people who don't understand these things come into the church meeting and hear everyone speaking in an unknown language, will they not think you're crazy? He's not really asking, by the way. He's not asking, he's telling you something. Also is 1 Corinthians 14:4. So this is verse 4. A person who speaks in tongues is strengthened personally. A person who speaks in tongues is strengthened personally. But the one who speaks a word of prophecy strengthens the whole church. So prophecy is all-encompassing, has many different aspects, whereas it seems the 2 different types of speaking in tongues. So he keeps saying speaking in tongues, speaking in tongues, speaking in tongues, but I believe he's talking about 2 different types. He's very clearly specifying a mysterious language. He's saying that mysterious language, because in this very paragraph, that mysterious language that nobody understands except you is only useful for you. So it's a private thing that's supposed to be spoken privately. Private thing that's supposed to be spoken privately. So then it says here, 1 Corinthians 14:13. So anyone who speaks in tongues shall pray also for the ability to interpret what has been said. For if I pray in tongues, my spirit is praying, but if I don't understand, but I don't understand what I'm saying. So clearly he's making it clear that there's a certain type of speaking in tongues that is private, that is useful for you if it's lacking interpretation. It doesn't need interpretation if it's private, but if it's for the church, it's not fruitful not to have interpretation, because he made it clear if an unbeliever comes in, then what good is it to have everybody babbling and none of us even understanding what each other are saying? It says, so I thank God that I speak in tongues more than any of you. So what he's saying here is he does speak in tongues, but it is the private type, right? So, but he even says, but, this is 1 Corinthians 18. I thank God that I speak in tongues more than any of you. But 19, he uses the word but. In a church meeting, I'd rather speak 5 understandable words to help others than thousands of an unknown language, because it's not fruitful, it does not help. So then there's of course, 1 Corinthians 14:22 through 25. So I want to cover one of those things here. There's 3 things. Prophecy is the highest valued medium. The Holy Spirit gives that gift to whomever he chooses. That's a public display, meaning in the church. You are to publicly put that on display. Number 2, the next public display, the foreign languages, meaning I looked up what this word strange, it says up here strange languages in the original Hebrew. It means stammering. So either it's the lips of foreigners and stammering, which is up in 1 Corinthians 14:21, right? And so what I believe he's trying to say here, not only does this require interpretation, it requires interpretation because remember, these are one of 3 things he's talking about. He's talking about the highest one, which is prophecy. He's talking about the second one, which is a real language, a foreign language that needs an interpreter because it's a real language, And then there's the third one, which is the private, mysterious language of the Holy Spirit that is to be private. So there's 2 that are public, prophecy, and the speaking in a language that one can interpret, because he even says here, so you see, speaking in tongues is a sign for unbelievers. For unbelievers, not for the believers. Because if me and you are a believer, and you're speaking, let's say, German, all of a sudden you just start speaking German to somebody else, and I know you don't know German, and I know I don't know German enough to really even really distinguish at this very moment. What language is that? Is that, Russian? What is that? I don't recognize that language. What are you doing? But you're speaking it to somebody else who happens to be German. They interpret what you're saying because it's for their benefit. It's for their benefit because it's a conversion tool. So he's saying that is one of there's prophecy, the language, speaking in tongues, and there's a mysterious tongue that's supposed to be private, that's only to be uttered between you and God. Or you will have to interpret what is said between you and God so that it can edify the church. What I think confuses people is the next thing, is the fact he says prophecy, however, is for the benefit of believers, not unbelievers. So what I think he's summarizing in this statement, and I have a website that actually shows you point by point by point by point, because it's very hard to find, because a lot of people gloss over it, and you could tell they don't understand it. They just don't want to deal with it, so they gloss over it, and it's part of a huge report on this one chapter, and it's really annoying. But anyway, what I got from this was prophecy is for edification and encouragement, and it converts. So no matter who is sitting in the church, they benefit because it's fruitful on all kinds of levels, because the unbeliever benefits by being able to say to you, like it says here, prophecy, however, is a benefit of a believer. So you benefit to be able to have it said to you, God is truly here among you, because it confirms that God is with you, right? So that fact that it says encourage an easy tool to use for converting random unbelievers. No matter who is in the room, a believer always benefits. So meaning you benefit as a believer because you're being confirmed as being with God by the person on the outside. And you benefit as a believer because if that person on the outside is not present, you still are edified and encouraged. So what he's confirming, he's kind of putting it in a summary in a way that I think confuses people, probably because it's being translated in a different language, from a different language into English. But he's just re-summarizing over and over and over again that it benefits you to have people actually believe you, because he even says in the verse before, even so, if an unbeliever who doesn't understand these things come into the meeting and hear an unknown language, won't they think that you're crazy? Right? But it benefits you to be believed. It helps you to convert other people. So it benefits you. But it only benefits the unbeliever when it's a language only they can understand. So this is Linda of Christ King Forever. I'm hoping that made sense. Tongues are useful in a very isolated situations, whereas prophecy is always useful, and it puts a badge of honor on the believer. So that's why it benefits you. And it doesn't really benefit them because then they're left convicted, whereas you get to be like, yeah, God is with us. So, and then with speaking a foreign language, yeah. Anyway, this is Linda Chris. Thank you very much. God bless you.